and welcome to episode 119 of the Craft House Magic podcast. My name's Ellie and I'm coming to you from Norwich in Norfolk in the UK, and today is the 4th of June. So welcome everybody. I hope you've all had a lovely crafty week since the last time I've spoken to you, and I'm here to share all the things that I've been making since last time. So I have some knitting, some sewing, I have a big blast from the past because I'm going to go through all my garments I have in my wardrobe currently, and I've only got 5, so it shouldn't take too long at least. I have a few questions from the Ask Me Anything thread in the Ravelry group. I have a couple of confessions. And I also have some information on my shop update, which is Friday the 5th of June at 7 PM GMT. You can find me on Instagram, Ravelry and Facebook as Craft House Magic, and I have my own website, crafthousemagik.co.uk, where you can find my hand-dyed yarns, handmade project bags, stitch markers, hire, knitted needles and accessories, and also fabrics as well. So we have some Makalongs going on at the moment. First of all, I'd like to say that the What a Lot of Potter KAL's just come to an end, and we will be drawing prizes. So Becky from the Back to Blighty podcast and I did it as a collaboration, and we will be drawing prizes, and on Becky's next episode she'll be announcing the prize winners. Don't forget to watch Becky's podcast the next time she puts one out. So thank you so much for joining in for the knit along, and we have a couple more that's on the go as well, so do come and join those as well. So I have the spring shawl along going on in the Ravelry group, and that goes till right till the end of June. So it could be any shawl or scarf sort of pattern, it can be crocheted or knitted. Do come in, and if you have any sort of tenuous links to blankets, for example, that's fine as well, because you can wear a blanket as a shawl, can't you? I can't see why not. So do come and join us. It is just a discussion thread, but do post your finished objects in there as well, so we can see what the finished objects look like. I am going to be starting the summer sock along, even though the spring shawl along isn't finished yet. I thought we might as well start the summer sock along as well. So the summer sock along is basically from now, and it can be any sock pattern, whether you knitted or crocheted. It can include shorty and full length socks. It can include socks that you've actually knitted under 50% of already to get them finished, and I will be drawing prizes at the end of the knit along, which will be the end of August, so you have plenty of time to come and join in. So I think summer, ideal time to be knitting socks, because if you get a bit warm, at least they're not too much heat on your lap if you're knitting away, and you can carry them around anywhere, so everyone needs to be knitting socks. Except me, because I've got 35 pairs. But one more won't, well, a couple more won't hit, will it? So do come and join in there. I'll be opening the Ravelry thread as soon as I finish the podcast, and I've got one pair of socks on the needles, which I shall show you next week, but I've got lots more that I'd like to knit, so I shall be showing you those in the coming weeks. So let's get on with the knitting first. I've been knitting on my, how can I have forgotten what it's called? My Jigshawl puzzle, and it's a lovely pattern by Stephen West, and I've basically finished the main body of the shawl now. It's a big triangle. So it's knitted in a 4-ply yarn, but it is actually held double, so it comes up as sort of a DK really. And these colourways I actually made as a mini set, but I've actually obviously used a full skein of each, and it's mini set 4 on my website, but I will go through the colours as well. So I'm hoping I won't bang these cables on the table. I've got a little panda holding some stitches so that they don't get dropped, because I've got to do an I-cord around the edge. So this one is Lucky Star. It's a pale pink with some grey speckles in there. We have I Think We're Alone Now, which is different pinks and some yellow and corals in there as well. This one is Come On Eileen, and I'm really into this sort of yellowy green at the moment. I have Rock Me Amadeus, is this tiny little triangle here, which is basically green, purple and blue colours, quite pastel-y. This one is Holding Out for a Hero. This one is Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now, like a corally pink with some speckles, or not speckles, splashes of different colours in there. This one here is Tell It To My Heart with some sort of beige and like a dusky pink. This one is Smells Like Teen Spirit. I think that might be it. I think I've told you all the colours. Trouble is, it's so big I can't hardly get it in shot now without being basically pinned against the wall. But there we go. You can see where I've got sort of cable there with little pandas on the end holding some stitches, because I need to pick up some stitches again and do some I-cord edging around the outside, which I think will be lovely and cosy. But you can get an idea what it's going to look like if I put it on. Basically, I'm all snuggly and lovely and warm there. So the edges come down long enough, I think, to balance out the centre point. But with that I-cord edge on as well, it's going to be amazingly warm. Oh dear. So that's my sort of almost finished object, although it's going to probably take me a little while to do that I-cord edging, but we'll see. So the pattern itself says to use 2 strands of 2 different coloured yarns, but a lot of the squares, actually all of those, I've actually used 2 strands of the same colour because I wanted to see the different blocks of colour all over. And I'm thinking of maybe doing the edging in Smells Like Teen Spirit, because I feel like turquoise is always good. Oh dear. Right, so that's my first thing I've got to show you, but I do have my hat that I showed you finished last week, but I have blocked it and I wanted to show you it on my balloon. So I soaked the hat in some wool wash, squeezed the water out of it, and then I've got a spinner that I spin out the excess water, but you could roll it in a towel, and then I've just I actually placed the balloon inside when it was not inflated very much, and then kept blowing it up little bit by little bit until it was the right size to get that end bit all nice and flat. I'm going to see if I can zoom in there for you to see. You can see that spirally bit on the end of the hat. This pattern is the Everyday Slouchie Beanie by Trysten from Dragon Hoard yarn. I've just taken it off camera so it didn't make some squeaky noises. So I've blocked it because I wanted it to look a little bit slouchier. And I always like the way that merino yarn looks when it's been blocked. This is 2 strands of yarn knitted at the same time, and it's a merino nylon base and a cereal alpaca and silk lace held together. So the merino nylon is 4-ply and the lace together makes a sort of a DK weight. This pattern is the Everyday Slouchie Beanie by Trysten from Dragon Hoard yarn, and I just wanted it to have a nice drape in it, and with blocking it just gives it extra nice drape. So I'm going to try it on for the first time since I've blocked it, so hopefully it goes okay. So there we go, hopefully you can see. Hopefully I've got it on properly, but I think that drape's slightly nicer now it's blocked. Ta-da! I'll do you another twirl. Hopefully the back of the chair doesn't get in the way. I don't suppose it is, because I'm not that tall. But oh yes, I'm really pleased I knitted that. So the edge is like a double brim. So it's really nice and thick against your head, and it's got a lovely fluffy halo on it. Absolutely gorgeous. So these are both my hand-dyed yarns. The merino nylon I've had in the shop for ages, but this Friday I'm going to be releasing the cereal alpaca and silk base as well, so that you can purchase this. So I dyed both of the yarns in the same colourway and held them double, but you could of course use the undyed cereal alpaca and silk held double with something else, and it'll tone the colours down a little bit. But there we go, love it. Let's show you that colourway a bit closer up. So it's some beautiful greens and greys. So it's some really nice delicate greens and greys in there. And I think that'll go with quite a few of my sort of outfits. Not that I'm completely coordinated all the time, but that's how it's come out when it's blocked. Yes, and I definitely think that there's a lot nicer drape once it's been soaked and left to dry nicely on a balloon. And I do think that putting it on a balloon rather than laying it flat on blocking mats does help quite a bit as well. So there we go, that's my second thing I've got to show you. And I haven't actually done any more knitting. I don't know where the time's gone this week, but Adam has finished his hat. So Adam has been knitting the Sockhead hat by KAL and MKAL, and it's a really nice longer hat. This is actually slouchier than the everyday slouchy beanie, but I shall show you it on in a minute. So this is knitted with Scribbles and Knits yarn and the Lightspeed colourway, which I think is a very good name, and I think there's about 70 grams has been used in this, and it is a free pattern on Ravelry if you're looking to knit a hat. I noticed that the decreases on the top of the head are much more severe than the everyday slouchy beanie that I did, that was by Trysten. So this one is quite a severe decrease at the top, if that makes sense. Lots of decreases very quickly, if that makes sense. And it's come out lovely, really nice colourway, and I think he's done really well. So there's about 4 inches of ribbon there, and then it has taken him about a year to knit this. Well, actually it is less than a year. He cast it on last July and he's finished it off this week, so I'm very proud of him for knitting it. I have got one of these hats myself, so there's 2 ways you can sort of wear it. I knitted one out of silk some time ago, so you can wear it like this with a big slouchy bit on the back, but you can also actually pull this down and turn the ribbon over. Trying to look in the little screen to see if I look like an idiot. Well, yes, of course I do. And you can wear it turned up as well with a little bit flapped over in the back. But Adam looks much better in it than me, I think. So he's knitted it for himself. And he's really pleased with it. So he's now got a finished object he's actually knitted. And he started socks something like 2, maybe 3 years ago. He's gone back to knitting those, which I shall quickly show you in a second. But I just wanted to show you the yarn in the cake. That's how much she's got left, and I guess there's about 30 grams. I haven't measured it, but I said, oh, I can have that in my scrap stash, Adam. And he's like, no. I said, what are you going to make with this? He goes, I don't know, but it's mine. Oh dear. Anyway, he's got his superhero bag here, and it's got some Captain America and things on, and the Hulk. But he's completed one of his socks, which is just a standard sock pattern. He's basically following my simple top-down sock pattern, and basically he doesn't actually read the pattern, though. He gets me to tell him what to do next when I'm sitting next to him on the sofa, which I think is cheating. Don't you? So he'd done one sock, and I don't know why he got so fed up of knitting on this, but he's basically just on the foot decreases, and I've let him borrow one of my cookie progress keepers because he liked it so much, and he hasn't got far to knit down the foot, and he finished, and he got a pair of socks then. So I said, you should finish these before you start another hat, because he enjoys knitting hats because he doesn't have to do purl because he doesn't like it. I think he'd stopped when he was doing the heel flap, because obviously you've got to go backwards and forwards, and he doesn't like doing purl very much, so I think he left it in a huff and was like, I want to do some knitting just straight instead. Oh dear. So the yarn here is a Heart and Soul yarn that I've knitted a pair of socks out of as well. He's using scraps that were left over, and it's a stripy blue and white. I wouldn't say that this was the best sock yarn in the world. It's not my favourite, but I thought it would be ideal for Adam to start with. But now he's got a taste for the posh stuff, the Merino, etc. He doesn't want to knit on it again, but he is going to finish that pair of socks. I've said no more knitting until you've done those socks, but I'm pleased that he's actually completed something. Perhaps if I block this, I'll show you how I sort of block from beginning to end on a balloon if you'd like to see that, but do let me know if you would like to see it. So that's what Adam's been knitting. I have sent Adam's mum another project to be knitting on, but she hasn't finished it for today, but I'm sure she'll get it finished by next week, because you know how quick she is with these things. I have, this weekend though, I've spent most of the time sorting stuff out and making decisions of what I was going to do. So I have had a sort out of my yarn stash. You can see that there's a bit less up there. And I have picked out some yarns to do a shawl pattern with. So I've been in my stash and I picked out these 5 because I thought they went together quite well. And I thought that they'd fade quite nicely on a Stephen West shawl. So I've picked these out. So this one is West Green Loft Yarns, served up by West Green Loft Yarns. We have this one here, which is a colourway by Looking Glass Fibre Arts, and she's changed her name now to a different one, which I've actually got a skein in this fade as well, that's her newer name. And this is the Summer Wind colourway, which has got a bit of the blue but a bit more sort of fluorescent green in there as well. We have this one, which is a Snuggly Stars yarn from Nottingham Yarn Expo a couple of years ago, but I don't know what I've done with the label, and I literally had it when I was sorting them out. So that's the next one in the fade. Then I've got some gorgeous beehive yarns, and this colourway is, if you want exposure, I'll get my tits out. Oh dear, I hope that didn't offend everybody. I should have warned everybody I was saying the T word. And this is Ball of Love Yarns, and this is the same company that used to be Looking Glass Fibre Art, and this one's called Twilight Sparkle. But isn't that gorgeous? I don't normally go for fluorescent things, but I think with a shawl, I think that will look fantastic. So I was looking for 5 colour shawls on Ravelry, and I've got quite a few more now added to my list. But I decided to choose the Chevron Shenanigans shawl by Stephen West, and I think they'll look really nice as that pattern. So I'll either be knitting it, or I might give it to Adam's mum to knit, because she keeps asking me for more projects to do. But at least I've made a decision, and I've picked out quite a few more pairs of colourways that are in my stash to go together to sort of use the stash, and then I might purchase some more yarns. So the other thing that I wanted to knit is the Midsummer Haze sort of cowly, shawly type thing, and it's a pattern by Locatelli, and I saw my friend Julie had knit it, and I've picked a colour out of my own colourways, and this is another new base that I'm going to have in the shop on Friday. So this is a gorgeous baby alpaca, which is 70% baby alpaca, 20% silk and 10% cashmere, and this colourway is I Want to Break Free, because it was out of the new set of yarns that I did for sort of lockdown themed, because I thought they were a bit funny, but I thought that this sort of pale turquoise would be a lovely complement to the beautiful lacy pattern, and Julie tells me she managed to get it out of 1 skein, so I'm going to see how I get on. I can always dye some more up, I suppose, but this, oh, it's gorgeous. It's very soft against my skin. I think this will be a lovely base for sort of shawl knitting. So I will talk a bit more about my bases at the end of the podcast in the shop update, but I just thought I'd show you what plans I had for knitting. So very excited to cast that one on. So that's that. I have the sewing section next, and it's a very, very tiny sewing section, and it's very literal. So I've been doing some 1/4" hexagons, which are absolutely tiny, and I've literally just done a little flower shape like this. So this is going to be a little pin cushion in the end. I've been following the little video tutorial that Emma from the Vintage Sewing Box has been doing, and I'm going to make myself a tiny little, well, I say pin cushion, but it's a sort of a needle park for my English paper piecing, to put my little needle that I'm sewing with down instead of just popping it on the table. I think that'll be really handy to have in my little English paper piecing kit. So that's what that's going to be. I haven't done any more on my my little sewing case that I started doing the English paper piecing for. I also need to make a couple of these little florets to go on that case as well, so lots of practice. I feel that the little 1/4 inch ones have taken a little bit more practice to get into than the 1/2 inch ones, which I showed you last week I think, or maybe the week before when I've showed you this one I've done. You can see how much smaller they are. It's amazing. I know that it's obviously half, and it's half the edge measurement, but these feel so much smaller, but it is cute, isn't it? I don't suppose mine's the neatest in the world, but it is fun, and I've been using some new little hexagon pieces that you can leave in the work as well. But I will show you those little hexagons that are pre-cuts that you can leave in your work in my confession section, so watch out for those in a minute. So that is my sewing section, but now I have a blast from the past. Now I'm going to go through the 5 cardigans and jumpers that I have in my wardrobe at the moment. So I have knitted more than these, but I've either knitted them for friends and family, or I've donated them because I wasn't very happy with the fit. But these are the 5 that I have in my wardrobe at the moment. So first of all is my Madewell cardigan by Locatelli. I've probably knitted this a little bit on the long side really, because with the weight of the cardigan they do tend to stretch a little bit, and I did knit one that was slightly oversized on me, and I think that I could have done with going down a couple of sizes because it is quite big on the shoulders, but I do wear it, especially around the house, and it's nice and cozy. It's knitted in my own hand-dyed yarn in the You Spin Me Round colourway, which is like grey with purple and pink speckles on it. And it looks like this. I was attempting to do sort of 3/4 length sleeves, but they have come out slightly longer, but I think that looks okay. But it's something I do wear, so that's always good. Like I said, this is the Madewell cardigan by Locatelli, and there's quite a thick ribbed band around the neck. With this I did find that because I used quite a loose gauge on this cardigan, that I ended up having to just go round the seam on the inside and just do some crochet stitches just to keep it from stretching that little bit, and I did the same to the very edge of the work as well, just to keep it in shape, which I think that worked quite nicely. I think I did actually run a stitch down where the ragland increases were, just to give it a little bit more shape there as well, because it was even more sort of baggy before I did those modifications. But that's my Madewell cardigan. So this one is my Antler cardigan, and this is a lovely pattern by Tin Can Knits, and I just love the cables at the top here. The cables go all the way around the back there, and it's knitted in some Aran weight yarn that I dyed myself. This isn't a base that I actually stock in the shop at the moment, because when I knitted this I realised I wasn't really keen on having neps in such a thick yarn. I don't mind having neps in the thinner yarns, but with it being so thick I wasn't so keen on it. But this is on my Living on a Prayer colourway. And it's nice and cozy, and I picked some buttons. I think I got these from Minerva Crafts in the end, but I thought they went quite nicely with the actual pattern. I'm going to stand back and see if I can get the whole thing in. I did some bust shaping to give me a bit of extra room at the front. I think that fits pretty well. I think I'd also like to actually put some ribbon down the inside of the button band of the cardigan, just to stop it stretching, because I can feel it has stretched a little bit. But it just fit really well, and it's nice and cozy. But this is something I tend to wear in the house as well, actually, rather than outside, because it feels quite a sort of slouchy, cozy thing to wear. So this one is the Cherry Bloom cardigan, and this is a pattern by Lena Tosti, and there's some colour work all the way around the top of the yoke, which I absolutely love. I did this in John Arbor Knit by Numbers. I did proper colour work in 2 of the colours, which was the grey and the pale pink, and then I duplicate stitched the darker pink and the green in there, because I found that it would have put too much weight in this yoke bit at the top, but I'm pretty pleased with how that looked. I was quite surprised with how long the duplicate stitching took actually. So this is John Arbor Knit by Numbers, and it has pilled quite a bit, but I am quite pleased with the shape and everything. I think it fits quite nicely at the back. I did some bust shaping on this again. I basically stuck to the pattern, but I did change the cuff and the ribbing into a plain twisted stitch instead of, like, there was a bit of colour work in there. I knitted it for Edinburgh Yarn Festival 2019, so I had a little label that lovely Barbara from Knit and I Love was handing out on the at the festival itself, so I've stitched that on there to remind me. So there we go. Ta-da! Next is my pavement sweater, and this is a pattern by Vera Valimaki. I probably wouldn't wear this t-shirt under it, to be honest, but you can see how much wider the neckline is than this quite a high t-shirt neckline I've got. So I've done 3/4 length sleeves, and this is actually one of my favourite garments that I've knitted. It's got a nice curved hemline, which I think is really lovely. And it's just such a lovely yarn as well. So the yarn is Fine Fish Yarns in the Maven colourway. Isn't that beautiful? Gorgeous. And it's just a lovely drapey fabric. And I'm actually tempted to knit another one of these. Really pleased with that. Ta-da! This is my last one to show you, and it is quite short actually, so I don't tend to wear it that often, but I could wear a sort of longer t-shirt with long sleeves underneath it. I think it'd look quite good. So it's a cabled jumper, and it's by Debbie Bliss, and the yarn that I used was Stylecraft Luxury Wool Rich DK, and that's how it looks. There's cables all over the back. You know, I should wear this more really, because I do love the shape of the cables. I think they look really lovely. I just need to make sure that I've got a long sleeve t-shirt that goes really nicely with it. So there we go. So I'm putting Barbara out of a job doing all this modelling. I just wanted to show you how they looked on me, but that's my 5 garments that I have in my wardrobe that are knitted. I don't have any crocheted ones. I do tend to just crochet blankets and things for around the house rather than actually crocheting outfits themselves, but I might change that in the future. I do have the Ziggy Interrupted crocheted wrap thing that Sandra Paul from Cherry Hearts podcast had designed. I do have that on my to-do list, but I don't actually have any finished garments or shawls or anything, so I'll have to fix that, won't I? So thank you for the ladies that asked me the question about what knitted garments do I have. That was quite fun going through them and showing you what I've got. So there we go. I have a couple of questions from the Ask Me Anything thread. So the first question is from Susan, and she was asking me what are the basics for English paper piecing. So the things that I tend to use the most, I think that having pre-cut hexagons or whatever shape you're going to be doing is really a good idea, because it just, one, the cutting out paper is very boring, and 2, you get a very accurate cut when they're already cut by a machine, and you can get them quite cheaply online. Or I have actually got a cricut, whatever you call it, that cuts out paper very accurately, so I probably will use that in the future. So the ones I'm using at the moment I got free with a magazine, and they look like that. But you can get them from lots of like quilt suppliers online and things. So I tend to use a glue stick, but you don't actually have to use a glue stick. You can just use a needle and thread if you want to, but this is what I tend to use quite a lot. You can either use a nice little pair of sharp scissors, or a little rotary cutter and a mat, but to be honest, a pair of sharp scissors is probably sort of the cheaper option for when you start. You might not even get on that well with a rotary cutter and mat, so probably best to start with some scissors. Obviously you'll need little scraps of fabric. The needles I like to use are the John James Milliner's needles, nice and long, size 10, so they're nice and fine. So that's my favourite. But I think that people tend to just use size 9 and size 10 for English paper piecing. Some people like the milliner's needles like me that are slightly longer, but you can use slightly shorter ones if you prefer. But these are my favourites. So I think that's all you really need, really. I probably will do a little mini tutorial on English paper piecing at some point in the future. But I haven't done one just yet. Hopefully I'll get some in the future, but there are a couple of people that I've watched recently that have done tutorials. So Davina from Little Workroom Crafts has done one on how she does English paper piecing. She does some things differently to me. So she uses a different type of needle, which is shorter. So I'll leave links in the down bar to that one as well. You can watch it. And also Emma from the Vintage Sewing Box has also got some good tutorial videos on how to do some English paper piecing as well. But like I said, I shall hope to do some in the future. I had a lovely question from Emma from Eldenwood Craft, and she was saying, do I dye using a song as inspiration, or do I dye the colour and then think of a song to call it? So it's a bit of both, Emma. Sometimes I think, oh yes, that song, I need to dye that colour because of that song. And sometimes I think, oh, I just really fancy putting those combination of colours together. And then I think I have a big list of songs that I really like, and I then go down them and think, well, what song is actually reminiscent of that colourway? Because otherwise, if I don't have something that really reminds me of those colours, I will never remember the names, will I? But it is so much fun using song titles as the yarn inspiration, even if it's in retrospect after I've thought up the colourway combinations. But I generally pick the song title that really reminds me what that colour reminds me of, and plus it helps me remember the colourway names, because I think I've got about 100 at the moment. So thanks for that question, Emma. Next on the list is from Bridget, and she was asking me whether I've done English paper piecing in a different form. So she mentioned that Diane Gilland did a book on all point patchwork, which was basically all different shapes. Yes, I have done some different shapes apart from hexagons. I've got an unfinished project here to show you. So this is an example of Lupercalia, and I actually just picked the fabrics because the colours went well together, but I just didn't think that it was particularly working well with these shapes that I was using. So there's diamond shapes that fit in the centre together there, and then different shape of diamond, a pentagon, and then some triangles, and then I was just working on the next sort of layer to fit them in. So with Lupercalia, normally when you fit these shapes together, it sort of brings a nicer pattern once you've fitted them, if that makes sense, like a combined pattern of the triangles, whereas the ones I've chosen aren't particularly wonderful. It wasn't really inspiring me to carry on with the project, so it's been left with threads hanging from it. And I think as well, these triangle shaped ones were a bit of a pain to sew, so I wasn't really enjoying those as much. But what the aim of this project was to do a sort of a mandala shape and then applique it onto something rather than doing a big quilt. But that's how far I've got with it. I really should pick up my old projects that I haven't finished. It's a bit naughty, really. Oh dear. So that was, hopefully that answers your question, Bridget. So Helen, who's Josie Kitten, asked me whether I dyed my minis as minis, or whether I dye a full skein and then split it into minis afterwards, and whether the way it knits up actually looks different as to whether it's dyed from a mini or a full skein. Now it does depend on what style of dyeing I've used. So some colourways are sort of designed to microstripe on like a sock, in which case it might look differently because the diameter of the loop once you've unwound a skein is smaller with a mini skein compared to a full skein. So the circumference of the changing of colour is different, but it also depends on your gauge and how many stitches you've cast on as well, really. So it really depends on whether you're comparing it to someone else's knitting or just your own. If you're knitting on the same number of stitches on the same gauge with a mini skein and a larger skein that's been microstripe dyed, then there will be some slight differences, but of course we've all got different gauges and we use different stitch counts for our socks, so hope that answers that bit. If it's a sort of randomly dyed skein where there are splotches of colour all over the place, it won't really make a lot of difference between the mini skein and the large skein dyeing, really, so that it'll look pretty much the same, although because it's hand dyed, every skein is very slightly different, so nothing will look exactly the same between different batches, if you see what I mean. So hopefully that answers your question, Helen. I have a confession section next. So I was watching the lovely Emma from the Vintage Sewing Box, and she's got some videos, like I was mentioning before, on how to do English paper piecing in terms of these little tiny hexagons, and her latest video was how to do the tiny little hexagon pin cushion, or needle part cushion, as I was talking about earlier, and she mentioned that you could get these little hexagons that you leave in your work. So they're basically little fabric hexagons that you can just see at the bottom, and they're actually quite thick, really, but you can just leave them and they're washable, so once they're in there it's fine. And I thought, well, I don't mind taking the papers out of something this size, but when you're talking about this size, no. So I thought I'd get some of these. I will leave links to the tutorials and the confessions things in the down bar, as well as on my website as well in the show notes tab. So these are from Ashmead Designs, and you could buy different sized ones. It tells you on the little piece of paper that's included with the little hexagons that which way to put them up, because there's a fluffy side and a woven side, and you make sure that the fluffy side is towards the wrong side of the fabric before you start folding the pieces of fabric around the little hexagon. Because I've only used enough to make this little hexagon flower, but I'm really enjoying using them, and the fact that I don't actually have to pick these tiny little things out is just fantastic. So there we go. I shall leave a link in the down bar. Right, so because I've been looking at my stash, and because I've been getting into, right, oh, I could knit this shawl. I could knit this shawl with all this stash I've got. I needed to buy West Knits book number 3 because it's full of shawls. And do you know what? I'm so glad I purchased this. I think if you bought the full set of patterns from Ravelry, it was something like €28. And I think it was €30 for the physical copy. Obviously, I paid postage as well. But I actually bought this from Stephen and Penelope because it was very exciting. Plus, I couldn't find a UK supplier at the moment. They all seem to be sold out. So there are so many lovely shawls that I want to make out of this, including the Chevron Shenanigans that I mentioned earlier with those 5 yarns that I'd found in my stash. Let's see if I can get a picture. Now, here is the unprofessional podcaster who hasn't put a bookmark. Let's see. It's nice big writing actually in this book, because sometimes things are a little bit small print. So I'm going to attempt to put this in the top corner so you can see the Chevron Shenanigans pattern there without me showing you the actual pattern instructions. But there are so many lovely patterns in this. So this is the Speckle and Pop shawl, and there's two there. There's 2 people holding one each, but you can see how that lovely really interesting edges, so I'm tempted to make this one as well, especially this pink and blue one. That looks really lovely. So you can actually, if you go on the Ravelry page for the book, West Knits book number 3, you can then see all the different patterns in there, and there's actually quite a few that I really fancy making. Look at that one, isn't that gorgeous? Love it. Really lovely. So I'm really pleased I got this. And because I was putting an order in from Stephen and Penelope, I thought, well, if I'm paying the postage, I'm going to buy myself a pin. So I've got the West Knits or the Best Knits pin. Isn't that cute? Love it. I was very tempted by all the other pins as well, but I thought, Ellie, you can't have all the pins in the world, can you? So I was very good. I was restrained. So I only bought a couple of things this week. Oh dear. So that's all my purchases. I wasn't too bad. So last of all, I've just got some information on my shop update, which will be going live Friday the 5th of May at 7 PM GMT. And I'm restocking these dried flower progress keepers. So I've got 3 in each hand there. So you just purchase for one of these, but you can see the 3 different clasps: smaller lobster clasp, larger lobster clasp, and the lever back clasp there. But there's the 2 colours that I'm restocking in the shop, and these are ideal as progress keepers or little tags for your project bags. I think they're really pretty. This batch of the ones that are yellow are slightly more orange than the last ones I had, but the pink ones are the same as the last batch I had as well. So those will be restocked, but I'm also stocking more lace bases and that other 4-ply that I showed you earlier. So first of all, in the terms of lace, I'm going to be stocking this 100% merino lace. So this is a very fine laced weight yarn. And it's 1,200 meters. So there's a thread, so you can see how fine it is. So this is a lace weight yarn, ideal for really lacy shawls, and I've just dyed it up in a from a distance colourway just so that I can see how it dyes up, and it seems to have a similar quality as the normal merino nylon, but in the 4-ply, but this is obviously a very fine version of it. So I'm also going to be stocking the alpaca and silk lace. So this is what's left of the yarn that I knitted my hat with, which I held double with some merino and nylon, and that's what I've got left from a 50-gram ball. But then I just wanted to show you what it looks like when you do speckles on it. So the speckles aren't as sort of small and compact. They tend to bleed a bit more. So I'm going to offer all the colourways in my shop in this new base. But obviously the ones that are speckled won't come out so sort of tidy and compact, the speckles. They're more, they bleed out a little bit more just because of the nature of the base. But this is a lace weight yarn. So it's a laced weight yarn and it's really lovely and fluffy. But that's in the bubblegum colourway. So those yarns, as well as the 100% silk lace, will be available in the shop. So I've got 3 lace bases now, and I was thinking that I needed to have a sort of more luxury base as well as the MCN that I carry in the fingering or 4-ply weight. The MCN is 70% superwash merino, 20% nylon and 10% cashmere, and that's a very fluffy yarn, but I thought it would be nice to have something that's a little bit more silky as well as a sort of luxury 4-ply or fingering weight. And obviously I chose the one that I showed you before. This is the 70% alpaca, 20% silk and 10% cashmere, so there is a little bit of cashmere in there as well. So it's a nice plied yarn with a tiny bit of a halo, and it's super soft, especially for shawls and things. So I think that'll be ideal for my sort of shawl cowl thing that I'm making out of Hohe's pattern, the Midsummer Haze. I'm very excited to introduce those. So they'll all be listed, all my new bases will be in the shop Friday at 7 PM. If you have any trouble choosing your base, don't hesitate to email me on crafthousemagik@gmail.com. I'm happy to help you. Sometimes it takes me a day or so to reply, but I do try and reply as quickly as possible. Because sometimes it is confusing when you haven't been knitting very long and you're not quite sure of what base you need for whatever project. But I have got a page on the website that's called Yarn Bases, and it's a rundown of the different weights, what they're used for and what the composition is, and hopefully that'll help you as well. There's photographs of the bases that are undyed to give you a hand as well. I've now got another colourway which I'm now going to have as a sock set. And this is my Cornflake Girl colourway with the addition of Nobody does it better, and if you select sock set it'll just come with that colour. But of course, if you don't like the colour that is in the picture, then you can say, oh, there's grey in this yarn, can I have the mini to go with the grey instead of the coral colour? I'm happy to do that if you just leave a note with your order. So there we go, that's my new sock set, and I will hopefully be getting a lot more colourways matched with little minis so that you can pick up sock sets, because we've got the summer sock along. Do come and join in with the Ravelry knit alongs. It's so lovely to see what everyone's been making. I think that's all I've got for today, so thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I shall see you in the next episode. Bye!